Welcome to A News. I'm Umar Taslim, and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. World leaders are in New York for the UN General Assembly, where the war in Gaza, Ukraine's future, and global governance are dominating the agenda. With Gaza's death toll surpassing 65,000, Turkish President Erdoğan has called Israel's assault a massacre and has urged for Palestinian statehood, while Arab leaders push new recognitions and aid. At the same time, Netanyahu faces mounting sanctions, ICC probes, and growing isolation, even as he rejects Western recognitions of Palestine. Joining me to discuss the latest developments are Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator, Dr. Mehmet, Celik, and Dr. Nurhan El-Beya, a professor of strategic studies at the Istanbul Aydın University and consultant for the United Nations Development Program.
Filistin devletini tanıma kararı alan ülkeleri tebrik ediyorum. Bu adımın ve izleyen dönemdeki girişimlerin iki devletli çözümün hayata geçirilmesini hızlandırmasını diliyorum. Coğrafyamızda yaklaşık 2 yıldır İsrail hükümetinin artan saldırıları sebebiyle büyük bir insani felaket yaşanıyor. 65 bini aşkın insanın hayatına mal olan Gazze'deki katliam tüm şiddetiyle sürüyor. Elini vicdanına koyan hiç kimse yaşananları kabul edemez. Dahası böyle bir soykırıma sessiz kalamaz. Netanyahu hükümetinin amacı Filistin devletinin kurulmasını imkansız hale getirmek, Filistin halkını da mümkün olduğunca göçe zorlamaktır. Bu olumsuz gelişmelerin ortasında Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi üyelerinin de dahil olduğu bir grup ülkenin Filistin devletini tanıma kararı alması son derece önemli, tarihi bir karardır. Filistin Devlet Başkanı Abbas'ın bugün bizimle birlikte olmasını arzu ederdik. Buna rağmen bugün söz alan tüm katılımcıların aynı zamanda Filistin halkının da sesi olmasını çok ama çok kıymetli buluyorum. Şu da bir gerçek ki bugün Filistin davası artık dünyaya mal olmuştur.
Welcome back to the program. Dr. Mehmet and Dr. Nurhan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mark.
It's a pleasure to have you guys again. Dr. Mehmet, I'll start with you today. Firstly, today Turkish President Erdoğan is going to address the UN General Assembly. Yesterday there was a conference on Palestine. We saw France and Saudi Arabia were hosting that conference, and France also recognized the state of Palestine. Now, Mehmet, how are you looking at yesterday's speech, and what are you expecting from the Turkish president today?
Well, first of all, yesterday's speech was focusing, of course, on Gaza as the assembly itself. I mean, the summit itself was on Palestine. Hosted by or called for by France and Saudi Arabia. Of course, Mr. Erdoğan's call was for more Western states to recognize Palestinian state, a sovereign and independent Palestinian state. And it also talked about the atrocities, the ongoing genocide in Gaza, saying that anyone with consciousness or with conscious in their heart, in their minds, should not be able to turn a blind eye to what is happening in Palestine and in the occupied territories in Gaza by the hands of the Tel Aviv war cabinet and Netanyahu's cabinet. So and the France, of course, announced the declaration and declared that they are going to recognize a Palestinian state. But what occupies Mr. Erdoğan's agenda is usually, I mean, traditionally it has been for I would say maybe even for the past decade, on first of all the need for reform of the international governance system. The UN system itself, the UN Security Council system, and how The world, he very famously says, the world is bigger than five. What he means by that is that the permanent five members are able to make a decision or they use their veto right and decide on world events or world issues that can be concerning different parts of the world, and they make that decision depending on their country's interests, rather than finding an actual solution to the issue itself. So he points to this dysfunctionality of the system. He points to the lack of solution coming from this system itself. The fact that the UN system can no longer produce any solutions to the ongoing issues around the world, be it in Africa, be it in Asia, Latin America, or elsewhere, because also it has a lot to do with the fact that, for example, Africa as a continent has no members in the UN Security Council. There are no Muslim countries representing nearly 2 billion people in the UN Security Council. And if you look at the system itself, it was established after World War II, and the powerful states at the time had formed this system. But the world has changed since then. The world's problems have changed. The world is no longer a bipolar world. There is a multi-polar world with new players emerging that they want to have a say, and they want to be able to provide solutions to the international issues. So that need for a reform is something that always is visible on Mr. Erdogan's agenda. But rightfully, Gaza issue, the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, the Syria's redevelopment or reconstruction will be on agenda, and particularly I think the highlight, of course, and again, given the fact that there is an ongoing genocide in Gaza, a large portion of that address will be allocated to the call for a solution to this injustice that's going on in Gaza and the occupied territories, and the international community's idleness in face of this atrocity. So these issues will be, I think, at the core of Mr. Erdogan's address. But again, he also brings up the issues like the climate change, like AI, for example, AI governance, how that will be something that the world needs to, the system itself, the governance itself needs to find solutions for, or how they're going to regulate it. The issue of family, I think Mr. Erdogan always brings that, protecting the family as an institution for his agenda. This is something that will also be, I think, talked about. In addition to some of the very visible areas of conflict like Ukraine, Syria, Russia, Gaza, but also the issues in Africa. I think the ongoing conflicts in Sudan and Congo and elsewhere, the danger of escalating some of the tensions to worse than what they are, I think will also be talked about, and how the system itself needs to produce solutions to these, and that need for reform will also be attached to each one of these conflicts. As, for example, in Syria or in Gaza or in Ukraine, when there are two conflicting sides in that UN Security Council, it's absolutely impossible to find a solution, even when there is a humanitarian crisis. So these will be some of the key highlights expected from his address today.
Mehmet and Nurhan, yesterday we were seeing how there's a nationwide strike ongoing in Italy. And now Italy is not a Muslim majority country, right? People are taking a stand for the Palestinians. Look at what happened in London after Keir Starmer recognized the state of Palestine. People were celebrating, even similarly in France. And of course, we know that Italy and Germany still do not recognize the state of Palestine, but look at the intensity of those protests. And this is something completely different from what we've seen in Arab countries or Islamic countries, right? We saw how there was the Arab Islamic Summit in Doha as well a few days ago. There were no concrete decisions. There was just a declaration which was issued by the members. Nurhan, what are you expecting from Arab leaders this week when they take to the podium? What reaction are they going to give when we talk about Gaza and the Palestinians?
Actually, nothing. No one, especially Arab nations themselves, they are not waiting from them anything. Do you know why, Omar? Because if they had the intention to do something, I think they would have done so in the previous summit in Doha after Israeli attack. But what did they do? We had huge hope actually in that summit in Doha. But what did they do? Condemnations. After that group picture, and that's it. This is what they did as a summary. We didn't see any actual implementation or any actual resolution related to security, related to Gaza, related to security of the Arab region in general. A country has been attacked, and that country already is under the American protection. Same as Kuwait, same as Saudi Arabia, same as Emirates, same as Bahrain, same as Oman. Those 6 countries. Nothing happened. So if they really had the intention to do something, they would have done something at that summit. So in UN, United Nations General Assembly, we are not expecting, personally, I'm not expecting anything significant from them. This is a result of what? This is a result of complicated reasons. It's a result of geopolitical interest and geopolitical alliances. The fear of raising their voice against Israel, the fear of losing the peace agreement, the fear of losing the dependence on Western countries and United States, the fear of losing the power that they are receiving from US in terms of security, military, economic partnerships as well. Plus, we shouldn't forget a very important point I have to mention. Most of Arab countries, the regimes in Arab countries are basically authoritarian regimes. So they have fear of losing their agendas, their internal agendas, as a result of raising their voice loudly against Israel. Also, they have a fear of unrests, also as a result of showing their actual actions or situation or whatever against Israel. So they always have this fear as authoritarian regime. They have this fear of the public opinion and the public reaction as a result from their reaction. So they don't want to lose their agenda. They don't want to lose their power. So that's why they remain silent. Also, other Arab countries, they are so busy with 2 things. Either with their conflicts, for example, we have Syria, we have Libya as example, Lebanon, and the lots of problems they are dealing internally, domestically. So they are so busy with their conflicts. They are so busy with their bad economical situation. On the other hand, countries in the Arab region, they are busy with the development process. For example, Saudi's vision, Emirati vision, Kuwait vision 2023. Those are so busy with the process of improvement, with the process of economic development. So they don't want anything to interrupt, or they don't want anything to destroy or to ruin the process that they are walking through to achieve the vision that they are planning for. So those reasons mainly are reasons behind the silence of Arab countries. And still, I'm mentioning again that we are not expecting serious or significant actions from Arab countries in the United Nations General Assembly.
Mehmet, isn't it a privilege when you're supported by the United States? I'm taking the example of Israel. Now, Netanyahu is also going to address the UN General Assembly on Friday. How difficult will it be for him, when he knows he has killed over 65,000 people and he's signing off on plans for illegal settlements as well in the occupied West Bank? How difficult will it be for Netanyahu to defend himself at the podium? What reasoning will he give?
I don't think Netanyahu is worried about defending himself. He's not defending the killing of more than 60,000 people, the occupation, the genocide. He's not defending that. He finds that to be his legitimate right, in a way. So when you find something that you're entitled to, you don't necessarily have the need to defend it. Netanyahu comes from that mindset. When that is the case, he doesn't have a worry about defending himself. He doesn't care about the rest of the world, what the world or the international community, international public opinion thinks, when he has the political impunity supported or granted by the United States.
Also the recognitions.
Also the recognition, but in face of growing international public opinion against what is taking place in Palestine, in the occupied territories, in Gaza, in face of growing recognition of Palestine as a state, in face of human rights groups or the UN condemning what is taking place in Palestine, Netanyahu does not have that sense of being in the state of defense mechanisms. He's very aggressive in the sense that he believes in this perverse ideology that he's entitled to do all these things. He's granted through a holy text or interpretation of a holy text that this is his right, legitimate right to do what he is doing, basically. I mean, whether he's killing babies or whether there's civilians being killed, whether there's a distraction, a famine, a starvation being used as a weapon, whether international communities describing all these events as a war crime, I don't think it bothers Netanyahu's psychological state. When that is the case, he has no shame, and then that would lead to defend himself. In the podium, he will speak and try to explain how right he is doing what he is doing, basically, and that he feels like the international community should be supporting him instead, when the rest of the world is against what is taking place or criticizing what is taking place in the occupied territories. So when that is, with that psychology, with that mindset, it is hard to convince someone to even say that killing babies is not justified, shouldn't take place, even during a war. So is it easy will it be easy for him to defend himself? He's not going to defend himself to begin with.
Nurhan, on the other hand, there's Mahmoud Abbas, whose American visa was revoked by the Trump administration, and they said it's because of national security. What do you make of this when the Palestinian president is not at the UNGA? What impact would that have?
I would like to highlight something. This is against the international law and against the United Nations Accord. Because in 1947, there is an agreement called United Nations Headquarters Agreement. It said that, or it's saying that United States as host country, it should give or grant or permit access to all United Nations representatives. This is so clear in the agreement in 1947. So what did Trump actually and his administration, what did they do is totally against this agreement. This is number one. Number two, the initial step of posing Mahmoud Abbas visa came from the far-right activist Loomer, when she posted a video showing Palestinian children, specifically from Gaza, just arrived to United States for receiving medical treatment with their families. So this created a phobia for far-right activists, Loomer and others, of course, and they started talking about Islamophobia. They started talking about Islamic invasion in United States. They started questioning how those kids and their family, along with their families, they just entered United States. With which visas, which type of visas, how it was that easy to get that those visas. So they started questioning, and after that, directly Trump administration, they decide to pause Mahmoud Abbas visa, even for United Nations activities, not only General Assembly, but for other activities. After that, the Trump administrations justified this from political perspective. They started saying that Palestinian Authority, they are not comply with so many commitments related to Oslo Accords. This was justification. Number one, justification number two, they said that what United States calls lawfare, they said that Palestinian Authority, they are involved with what they call it lawfare. Lawfare at, if you remember 1 year ago, the International Court of Justice, and the cases were open against Israel and the high level of aggression of Israel in Gaza Strip. Who was involved in these cases? The Palestinian Authority. So those two justifications was from their perspective, from Trump administration perspective, was enough to pause the visa of Mahmoud Abbas. The Palestinian Authority, they pushed back strongly not to this, or not to allow this to happen. As a response, United Nations decided to allow Mahmoud Abbas to attend United Nations General Assembly remotely. They took, or they came up with a resolution by voting with 145 in favor, 5 were against, and 6 were abstentions. They gave abstentions. So after that vote, United Nations came up with this resolution, and they allowed Mahmoud Abbas to participate in United Nations General Assembly remotely, not only, by the way, Mahmoud Abbas, and another senior Palestinian officials to allow along with Mahmoud Abbas remotely.
He was addressing yesterday as well at the Palestine conference, which was hosted by France and Saudi Arabia. Nurhan and Mehmet, I'll be right back with you guys. Thank you for that analysis. Canada and Australia have joined the United Kingdom in formally recognizing a Palestinian state, a coordinated move that adds momentum to international efforts for a two-state solution amid the ongoing war.
The United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced the United Kingdom's recognition of a Palestinian state after Israel failed to meet certain conditions, including a ceasefire in the nearly 2-year-old Gaza war. London's step aligns it with more than 140 other nations, but will irk both Israel and its main ally, the United States. Alongside the UK, Canada and Australia also recognised a Palestinian state on Sunday. Others, like Belgium and France, are expected to follow suit this week at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Speaking in the West Bank, Palestinian Foreign Minister Wassim Aghabekyan Shahin welcomed the decision.
It is a practical, tangible, irreversible step that countries must take if they are invested in preserving the two-state solution. This also sends a very clear message of hope to the Palestinian people, who are facing an existential threat.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the move poses an existential threat to Israel. Downing Street's decision also carries symbolic weight. Britain played a major role in Israel's creation as a modern nation in the aftermath of World War II and has long been its ally. Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy has previously said Britain had a historic responsibility to facilitate a two-state solution. It dates back to the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which pledged that the creation of a Jewish state would not infringe on Arab rights. The US has strongly opposed the recognition moves by its European allies. It has responded by imposing sanctions on Palestinian officials, including blocking them from attending the UN General Assembly by denying and revoking visas.
We recognised the State of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognise a Palestinian state also. A pledge to the Palestinian and Israeli people that there can be a better future.
Welcome back. Dr. Mehmet, Ahmed al-Shara, the Syrian president, he's also attending the UN General Assembly, and it's after, 60 years that a Syrian leader is going to be addressing the UNGA. What do you make of his appearance, his debut? What does Syria require at this point, Mehmet, to rebuild and, to give the people who have been affected by the civil war, over 14 years of a civil war, what does Syria require at this point?
Well, of course, it's very significant that someone who was actually on the wanted list is now at the UN General Assembly. It shows that, after 14 years of war, things are actually changing drastically in Syria as the Assad regime was toppled, and now there is a president, a leader that is supported by many people in Syria and that is seeking to have international legitimacy and rebuild the country by the Syrian people through some democratic processes. So for any country in the post-war, post-conflict time, for any country, few things are needed. One is, of course, the reconstruction phase, be it in terms of infrastructure or in terms of institutional building. For this to happen, you need economic stability to be established, political stability established, but for these two to also take place, you also need security stability to be established. So the country needs to be stable in terms of security for economic prosperity to start kicking in, for political stability to actually help rebuilding the democratic institutions or state institutions. And for these to work together, you need the approval of the people for the government or for those who are actually going to lead the country. So all these different factors are, of course, linked to one another, and they can't be separate from one another. We cannot establish political stability if you don't have the economic prosperity for people to see some economic activity happening in their daily life. For economic activity, you need security. So unless that stability is established in terms of security, people are not going to make investments, right? They're not going to have economic transactions and do trade with one another. But for all this to happen in a country like Syria after 14 years of war, you need international support. Right now, what Syria needs is, I think, at the very basic level, is the humanitarian aid. You need development aid. So these two are very distinct from one another, although they are linked. But you need development aid and cooperation for infrastructure to build, for different projects to take place, and supported by the international community for that activity to begin. You need political recognition of Syria and those who are willing to lead Syria, or who are actually in charge of leading Syria. You need political recognition and diplomatic recognition for some of the foreign investment to come in. In terms of domestic security, it's also linked to regional dynamics as well. So when we talk about Syria's internal security, we know that Syria will need military cooperation. We know that Syria will need intelligence cooperation. We also know that there's different groups within Syria that are linked to regional countries they have an agenda of fragmenting Syria or dividing Syria, right? Like the Druze uprisings, for example, or that conflict that we saw a few months ago, we know that Israel is backing that division. We know that Israel wants to use the SDF or the YPG, which is the offshoot of PKK terrorist group, in northern Syria, and they want to establish that David corridor to link the Druze instability, the instability in Sweda region to the northeastern Syria. So all these are also regional dynamics or regional factors that are going to either contribute to Syria's reconstruction or add to the already very fragile dynamics within Syria domestically. We know that there's still different groups that could be triggered to create instability, as it happened in Latakia, for example, right? The remnants of the Assad regime. So for all these, for the puzzle to be complete and actually a good picture come out of the puzzle, there is more than one factor. And for all this, international support in a positive way is needed for Syria. That legitimacy, economic activity and foreign investment, development aid, humanitarian aid, military cooperation to reorganize a Syrian army. I mean, countries like Turkey, they have been there since day one, helping Syria not only politically and economically, but also in terms of establishing security. The SDF or problem or the YPG problem is still very fragile, very present, because SDF is not willing to integrate into Syria. Ahmed al-Shara, mentioned that during his visit this week in the United States, that there are some factions within SDF are not willing to perhaps still integrate into the Syrian army, and a military operation with Turkey may be imminent, right? So that, I think, multi-layered puzzle needs international community support to be solved, so that to be all the different pieces put together for a coherent reconstruction phase. Otherwise, with just establishing with just establishing infrastructure or delivering humanitarian aid, you cannot establish internal stability, political stability in the country. The country wants to rebuild itself as a democratic nation compared to the Assad regime or the Baas regime for over 6 decades. The political transition, how that will take place, will need some international support, especially from the region's countries. Constitution rebuilding, the elections phase, all these will need, I think, international support. And I'm using the support because international support does not mean direct interference in their will, in the Syrians' will, or direct interference in a dogmatic way, or direct involvement in a way that will be a zero-sum, or at least not a win-win equation for the Syrians and their future.
And we're starting to see that international aid and assistance pour in, because the European Union has removed sanctions and the United States has removed sanctions as well on Syria, right?
I mean, aid is one thing. Of course, Syria needs that for a reconstruction phase, and even humanitarian aid is needed. But development aid, when it is coming in, it should also be sustainable. It should be in a way that the projects can continue when the actors are removed from the picture. It should be in a way that Syrians will benefit in the long term, not just band-aid solutions or delivery of development aid with many conditionalities attached that in a way enables for the projects to continue. So there's that sensitivity, and I think it's a very delicate situation that must be taking into consideration all the dynamics within Syria rather than copy-paste solutions in terms of delivery of aid, or in terms of development aid, or in terms of constitution, rebuilding that institution, or in terms of elections. Syria has its own dynamics. Syria is a very diverse country, but Syria, wants to rebuild itself, but copy-paste solutions or dictation or imposing some plans or projects that will only serve the interests of the third country, or those who are willing to help Syria, then these are not sustainable plans.
Nurhan, the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, and the Chinese President, Xi Jinping, both of them are not attending this year's UNGA, and we know for obvious reasons why Putin isn't there. Do you think that Russia and China are trying to, give a challenge to Western-dominated multilateralism, or do you think that they're undermining these international institutions?
Their absence, actually, it's a symbol of rejection. They no longer, Omar, sees or believe that we should, China and Russia, to support a platform which is United Nations, or to give or to legitimize a platform like a United Nations, which is enforcing, from their point of perspective, Western role in this in the region or in the world in general. So from their point of view, United Nations before, their agenda was multinational, but now they are going to more national interest. This is from their point of view. So they decided to judge this platform, which is United Nations, as biased platform. That's why they give this reaction as a symbol of rejection. They are saying clearly that we don't want to be part of your world, which is biased, which is led by Westerns and United States, and you are putting Westerns in the middle of the world. So it was a very straightforward reaction from them, Omar, especially in a very sensitive year. This United Nations General Assembly this year is so significant because it's coming in a very sensitive year marked by intensifying fragmentation. Intensifying global fragmentation. So their attendance was really important, but they didn't attend as a reaction of their rejection, as symbol of rejection to be part of this world. They want only their unity that they created, or they are in the process of creation. So that's why they decided to take a part from this. This is kind of raising their voice in an indirect way to the international community and also against United Nations.
And also, do you think, Mehmet, because of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and also BRICS, do you think that they're valuing these organizations much more than, for example, the United Nations or other international organizations?
I think they're aware that, they're not in match at the moment. But I think, for Putin, we know for various reasons, he does, for the obvious reasons, he doesn't want to attend. And for Xi, I think it's a reaction to Donald Trump's position and the economic war. But I think it's not, the system itself is no longer, when we say it no longer functions for the current international government, for the international system. International players have changed, international setting has changed. I think this is one of the symptoms of that as well. If not taking United Nations General Assembly serious, shows that it has lost its prestige, its value for some of the very strong players in the international game.
Dr. Mehmet and Dr. Nurhan, thank you so much for being on another episode of Turkish Diplomacy and for that analysis from Gaza to UN and how the Arab world is reacting to whatever's going on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.